This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, settlement reached. Northern Pulp agrees to abandon the idea of restarting the mill in Pictou County with an eye on opening in Liverpool.
I'm Paul Withers in Argyll, where the province has agreed to speed up approvals for shellfish aquaculture. Not so fast, say some neighbors. I'll have that story coming up.
And high hopes for Africville. More than a half century after the community was torn down, former residents look to the future.
Building clouds, fog patches, chance for showers, even a risk of a thunderstorm overnight into Friday. Then we are clearing again. Your full forecast and weekend details are coming up.
Good evening. The Nova Scotia government and the owner of the Northern Pulp Mill have reached a settlement agreement. It includes the possibility of opening a new mill in Liverpool and an end to the idea of restarting the old mill in Pictou County. The agreement ends a lawsuit launched by the company in the aftermath of the closure of Northern Pulp and months of out-of-court negotiations. It also includes a plan to fund pensions for former Northern Pulp employees and a partial government loan repayment by the company. The Northern Pulp plant in Pictou County was shuttered 4 years ago after the McNeil government decided it would no longer be allowed to dump effluent near the Pictou Landing First Nation. The plant once employed about 350 people and has been left idle since 2020.
The Pictou mill is not reopening, but that doesn't have to mean an end to the hope for the kind of good-paying jobs and forestry work and exports that a pulp and paper mill brings with it. The province has agreed to support paper excellence in the idea of building a new craft pulp mill in Queens County, in the areas around the former Bowater Mill near Liverpool. With the support of the region's forestry sector, which is currently underperforming, the company believes that Liverpool could again support a new mill, and I agree.
There will be a viability study to determine if a new mill can go ahead in Queens County. That's expected to take about 9 months. The province's Minister of Natural Resources says a mill in southwestern Nova Scotia would help woodlot owners and bring jobs to the area.
A modern, efficient mill operating in the Liverpool area could establish the pulp market for this sector that this sector needs to rebuild, bringing with it good-paying export jobs. It would respond to the issues identified in Professor Leahy's Ecological Forestry Practices Review.
The Leahy report said after the closure of the Bowater Mill in 2012, the Western region lost a significant source of income. The outcome of the viability study will also determine what happens to paper excellence assets in Nova Scotia, as well as timberlands, which could be sold off in the event that a new mill does not open. The settlement must still be approved by the British Columbia Supreme Court. Today's announcement is bittersweet news in the Pictou area. Although there is now certainty around the old mill and the fact it won't reopen, there are a lot of other questions, like what happens next for the people of Pictou, whose livelihoods were affected by the loss of the mill. And Tom Murphy is in Pictou speaking with people in the community about today's news. He joins us now live. Tom.
Hi there, Amy. Yeah, for 50 plus years, this mill behind me has been an economic mainstay in this community. Tonight it is quiet as it has been for years, nothing belching from the stacks, no effluent flowing from it, no paper being made and no salaries being earned. You know, through the life of this mill, it has not been without controversy, and certainly there's been a diversity of opinion about it for many decades here in this community, and that is the same today when it comes to the government's announcement about the future of this mill. I spoke with Andy Thompson. He is a councillor with the municipality of Pictou County. His father worked at the mill. He had lots of friends who worked at the mill as well. He says, you know, even with the environmental concerns, the environmental racism attached to this mill, he said people have to remember that this mill did put a lot of meals on a lot of tables in this part of the province, and it really fueled the forest industry right across this province. Here's what he had to say today.
I just want them to think about the people that depended on their livelihood in the forest industry. And my concern is moving forward, now what? What are we going to do next? Like, we know that if you look at a mill in Liverpool, It's not helping the forest industry today. Like our forests are in bad shape, and what are we going to do next to fix that?
So you can hear the concern in his voice. You know, we asked him, interestingly, you know, can you point us in the direction of some of the former workers at the mill? He said it's hard to find them now. Most of them have left the community to find jobs in other parts of the province or other parts of the country. We're going to hear more about that in our Newsmaker interview coming up a little later in the program. Also went down the road to the wharf in Caribou, where the fishermen were just in with their fresh catch of the day. They have long been opposed to not the mill per se, but to the idea of an effluent pipe leaving the mill, flowing right out into the Northumberland Strait. Ben Anderson was one of the men who led the charge against that idea and the opposition to it. And he really says there's a sense of relief on the wharf today, but lots of questions still about what happens to this plant that's left behind me here. Here's what he has to say.
It should definitely be cleaned up, because you still have the place there, cancel chemicals, and in documents before, there is a missing amount of mercury in the ground. We want that all cleaned up.
Do you think that will happen? Do you see a day where that might happen?
I hope there is. There should be. Somebody should be held accountable for that mess over there.
So that is Ben Anderson, a fisherman on the wharf at Caribou earlier today. Pictou Landing First Nation Chief Tamara Young did not want to comment on this today. This really took them by surprise. Her office told me they had no idea this was coming, although they do similarly express relief about the way things are going now, that this mill will not reopen and that they will no longer have to be concerned about the environmental degradation that their community has suffered. Remember, Boat Harbour was that very controversial body of water where the effluent was being dumped from the mill. That was once the property of the First Nations community there. It was taken away from them under the Indian Act, some say stolen from them. So there's been a real bitterness about all of that over these many years. And the woman who led the fight on that front was the former chief, the then chief, now former chief of the Pictou Landing First Nation, Andrea Paul. We caught up with her in Toronto today. She talked a little bit about the fight and how she feels about where things are now.
It's definitely took a big toll on me with regards to how personally the impact it had on me. And it was something that I was very passionate about. And to be honest, did I ever think that it would reach the points that it has with, you know, the closure of the treatment facility site, with the announcement today? No, I didn't think that would be where it would land in that short amount of time, but I'm very proud of the work that was accomplished.
And that is Andrea Paul, who is now the regional chief, but obviously still concerned about what's happening in Pictou Landing First Nation, because they want to see a speed up of the cleanup of Boat Harbour now that this decision has been made about the mill, and they're hoping that that will speed things up. You know, as you can tell by the interviews there, Amy, lots of divided people when it comes to this mill and this community, and still concern here about what does happen next. With this economic mainstay no longer being any kind of a future element in this community, what will Pictou County turn to next? It's a question that's on a lot of people's mind here tonight, Amy.
It sure is. All right, thank you for that, Tom. That's Tom Murphy reporting live for us tonight in Pictou. Well, staying with this story, Northern Pulp is eyeing the South Shore as the location for its new mill. The CBC's Nicholas Sagan is in Liverpool today and brings us reaction from that community.
For many in Liverpool, the announcement was a welcome surprise.
I think it should be a mill here. Always was, and it was a good thing, and I think it should be again.
Forestry sector workers got the news from a live stream, then left with hope for new jobs and economic development in their field, saying a new mill can't come soon enough.
I say get her built. Sooner the better for everybody.
The area of Queens County has faced economic downturn since an old mill known as Bowater closed in 2012. And when the former Northern Pulp Mill in Pictou was shut down 4 years ago, it hurt the forestry industry province-wide. Some feel a new mill could breathe life back into the South Shore.
I think it could be a great boom for Queens County as well as the western end of this province. It's desperately needed, and we really need jobs in this county and in this end of the province, and it would be a great thing if it comes about.
But the new paper mill in Liverpool isn't a done deal. A feasibility study will determine if it will work and where it will go. But with recent memories of environmental concerns caused by the mill in Pictou, officials are swearing this time would be different.
New mills are modern. JF spoke earlier about the fact that this will be a state-of-the-art model for Canada Mill. And the Premier in his live press release stated clearly about strong environmental rules, etc. So I am confident that a new mill at today's standards is going to be a wonderful addition.
For now, details are scarce, and locals will have to wait months to hear more. But the idea of a new mill and what it could bring to the area's economy is keeping some people going. Nicola Sagan, CBC News, Liverpool.
In other news, the union representing approximately 10,000 Nova Scotia public school teachers have ratified a contract with the province. It comes after 10 months of bargaining with the province and required the help of a conciliator. Gains include salary increases and more prep time. The president of the Nova Scotia Teachers Union says they also got the province to agree on measures to address classroom violence, like adding more school counselors. The contract is effective until July 31st, 2026. All right, so a beautiful day today, but you're always looking ahead into what might happen.
That's right. And today, notable because it is the day that the National Hurricane Center releases its annual outlook for what we can expect this hurricane season. And in fact, they're predicting the most amount of storms they've ever predicted, 17 to 25 named storms. The average year sees about 14. Now, of those 17 to 25 storms, they're expecting 8 to 13 of those to become hurricanes, 4 to 7 of those becoming Category 3 storms or higher. That's a lot of storms, no doubt about it. And in fact, a pretty high confidence as well that this is going to be an above normal season. 85% chance of it being an above normal season. Why is the confidence so high? What are the big factors? Well, most notably, the above normal sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic and an above normal West African monsoon season. So that means a lot of thunderstorm clusters coming off the coast of Africa, hitting this very, very warm water, already near record levels in the tropical Atlantic. And so that will help to fuel and develop those storms as they track westward and into the Caribbean and towards North America. Also, currently in an El Nino, that is expected to change, a developing La Nina as we work our way through the later summer into the fall. That means less wind shear in the tropical Atlantic and into the Caribbean. So that means a more favorable setup for these storms as they approach Atlantic Canada and North America. So in terms of Atlantic Canada, you hear that number of storms, obviously that's going to get folks a little anxious, a little nervous, especially given the last couple of years. But it's very important to remember that just because we have a high number of storms does not mean we're going to have a high number of storms here in Atlantic Canada. Look no further than 2020. 30 named storms that year, the most on record, yet just one post-tropical storm Teddy impacted us here. The second highest named storms was 2005. We only had Ophelia here, which was basically a non-event. So Amy, just because we have a higher number of storms does not mean they will be, we'll see a ton of storms here in Atlantic Canada. There's so many factors, and really it comes down to what the atmospheric setup is during the week that storm develops and starts to track towards North America. And for that, we have to wait and see.
Yes, and keep our fingers crossed.
Indeed, and toes as well.
Toes. Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, in southwestern Nova Scotia, opposition has sprung up over plans to fast-track approvals of shellfish and marine plan aquaculture. The province has called for proposals at 6 locations in Argyll after the local municipality secured pre-approvals from federal authorities. Paul Withers reports.
Argyll was one place in Nova Scotia where shellfish aquaculture had social license. But clearly not everyone is on board.
But now they want to extend it and have 52 sites, and I don't think development should be here. Put your oyster cages where there are no homes.
Donna Gaudette and others say they were caught off guard when the province created the Argyll Aquaculture Development Area last month. Under the pilot project, applications will be subject to a paper hearing, not the quasi-judicial regulatory process required elsewhere. That will shave years off approval times because the municipality identified dozens of sites as suitable. 6 are now up for grabs, including a proposed oyster farm expansion at Salt Bay, where some neighbors are not happy.
I just found out about last week because somebody posted something on Facebook.
It's been a waterway for forever. People come there and fish, and you see kayakers and all kinds of different water sports going on, and it's going to restrict it.
Why should 1 or 2 businesses profit at the expense of all the citizens that boat and enjoy recreation here and the beauty of it?
We stand by what we did.
Warden Danny Muse acknowledges some were unaware and are concerned, but he's not backing down.
We had a public engagement. It was comprehensive. We probably did more than what protocol asked for. I mean, we were on the radio, we were in the newspapers, we had pamphlets handed out, it was in our newsletter.
The warden says this is a case of not in my backyard.
I think that's the biggest problem. People don't want to see that in their backyard, because that's some of the questions that I've asked. If this wasn't in your backyard, would you be as concerned? And the answer was, I'd be concerned, but not half as much as what I am now. So it tells you that it's the unsightly part of it that I think is the biggest concern.
He says it will be up to the province to take local opposition into account, but that process will not include a public hearing. Paul Withers, CBC News, Tuscot.
We told you yesterday the province of Nova Scotia is now acknowledging it won't be barrier-free by 2030, but it is planning to enact new rules for public buildings and spaces sometime this year. Many public institutions have started to lay the groundwork in anticipation of this new standard. For some, the cost could be in the millions. Shayna Luck has that story.
Professor Linda Campbell's office in the Science Building at St. Mary's University has been modified with accessibility in mind. She is deaf and has given much thought to the way design can include people or exclude them.
In a beautiful world, accessible by 2030 means everyone can be included.
Just down the hall, there's a spot that stops some people in their tracks.
They pause. They want to make sure, like, hey, is this flat?
To someone with low vision, the rectangles can look like stairs, a tripping hazard.
Obviously, with installing the floor, they didn't consider the accessibility aspect. So it will be expensive to fix this.
That it is challenging.
3 years ago, this architect was hired to do what's called an accessibility audit for most of the provincial universities. She also surveys many other types of buildings. CBC obtained the audit for SMU through Access to Information. It covered 15 buildings, and the cost estimates for each building ranged between $117,000 and $742,000. These are only high-level estimates. She says they should not be taken as a hard total, and prices have risen a lot in recent years. When she did the university's project, she was a bit taken aback at the costs.
I was somewhat surprised, and I think most of the clients were very surprised.
SMU declined an interview with CBC, but it's far from the only public institution facing expensive accessibility modifications. We asked the province what happens if institutions say they can't afford to make modifications.
If it's communicated that there is something that is non-compliant, the directorate will have compliance and education officers available to work with them.
And there were some washrooms that had.
According to architect Anne Sinclair, it is typical for institutions to combine accessibility upgrades with other necessary renovations. This spreads the cost out over time. Linda Campbell says people with disabilities must have inputs so the money is well spent with good results. And in an aging province with the highest rate of disabilities in Canada, she says people should understand why this is worthwhile.
There's a phrase in the disabled community, they use it often. everyone will become disabled. Sooner or later. Everyone.
Shayna Luck, CBC News, Halifax.
Halifax Regional Council has passed major zoning changes linked to Ottawa's $73 million Housing Accelerator Fund. Over the past 2 days, Council heard from more than 80 people on the Accelerator Fund, both for and against the zoning changes. The changes could allow for more than 200,000 new housing units to be built in the coming years. It would also allow 4 housing units on a lot within the service boundary and up to 8 units within most parts of the urban core. Taller buildings would be allowed on transit corridors. The changes passed without any amendments. More than 50 years after tearing down the former African Nova Scotian community of Africville, the city is launching a project about its future. Public meetings are going to be taking place over the next few days about the long-term vision for Africville. As Gareth Hampshire reports, people who used to live there have high hopes for the project.
And when you came to Africville, everybody welcomed you with open arms.
Bernice Arsenault and Beatrice Wilkins are sharing fond memories of their childhood in Africville with junior high students. They're leading a museum tour of the former community. They remember having to leave when the municipality demolished homes of 80 families and about 400 people, and want the views of those who lived in Africville to be front and center at the public meetings.
They're the ones who are going to tell you what it was, what it could be, and what it should be.
The Africville visioning process is a 3-phase multi-year project that will look at transportation, land use and other possibilities for the area that's a National Historic Site. Arsenault, who is even on a commemorative stamp, wants the church that is now home to the museum to be used for worship again.
And people would come out here and be our church again, you know, for the people, a church for the people.
Both think a new interpretive centre should be built to take in the museum's exhibits, allowing the church to reclaim its significance as a gathering place. There is also the issue of what will happen to the infill land created in front of the museum.
I think it could be a lot of things. So we're already looking at the Africville waterfront, development. What are the things that people love? People love biking. They love trails. They love being able to be connected from one part of the city to the other.
There are others who used to live in Africville who want to see even bigger changes.
Africville Park would be moved from its current location to that landfill. The lands remaining would be given back to the people of Africville for them to decide what kind of development they want to see.
The councillor who's been working on the project sees it as another key reconciliation step for the city.
If it comes out of the process that the ask is that the city return land, then we should figure out a way to support that in the future and support it in a way that sets everybody up for success.
This may be the last time we all sit together.
They're sending off the students with a song they used to sing in the church and are hoping to again. Gareth Hampshire, CBC News, Halifax.
I don't know this may be.
The U.S. Justice Department is filing antitrust lawsuit against the owner of Ticketmaster. And a beautiful look at Liverpool today. We've got Ryan up next with his full weather forecast. We're back on the other side of the break. Well, you certainly got people's attention when you talked about the number of storms that are predicted, a high number, but you also want to not get people too anxious.
We need to make sure everybody is crystal clear on this. Higher number of storms, that is very likely in the Atlantic, but that, again, will not necessarily equate to a higher number of storms here. And again, I earlier in the show talked about 2020 and 2005. Those are the two numbers, 30 storms and 28 storms those years, and yet really no large impacts here. So it really will depend on where the storms track, whether they stay to the south or whether they recurve out into the ocean. And
so no panic just yet.
No panic just yet. It will really depend what the atmospheric setup is like as these storms develop. And again, towards the later parts of August and more September and into October. So that's kind of our peak of the season here. So we'll get to that, but big, deep breath. Now is just a really good time if you've got maybe a couple of loose shingles, something you've been putting off. It's kind of a reminder.
Spring cleaning can do a little extra.
Yeah, hurricane season will be here eventually. Boy, it definitely is one of those days where it really depends on where you are across the province.
Yes, a bit of fog there.
Lots of sunshine, most of the province, but look at Peggy's Cove. Socked in fog there most of the day along the Atlantic coastline, just 14 degrees. And as we look at the highs today, you can see just 12 at Western Head, 29 at in the Truro region, and you can see that temperatures were warmest, not surprisingly, away from that Atlantic coastline, though we did squeak to 21 in Halifax, now 14 near the downtown, still 19 near the airport, still hanging on to the mid-20s further inland and towards the valley at 25 at the Caribou Point Station at Pictou. You can see the winds generally in from the south. We're looking at some gusts upwards of 60 at last check Grand Etang, but for the most part, it's quieter elsewhere. Some active weather tracking through New Brunswick. This is the line that we're going to be watching that's going to be scraping through Nova Scotia tonight, mainly to the south along the Atlantic coastline and to the north, as this line isn't too active by the looks of it right in the center as it will track through Nova Scotia. We'll show you that in just a second. Bigger picture, the heat is on across the south. 37 in Phoenix, 32 in Orlando, yet temperatures a little cooler than they should be for this time of year across the Canadian prairies. So tonight there is a risk of showers and a risk of a rumble of thunder as well. Overnight lows generally 10 to 14, a little milder down through the southwest. Now watch as you see this line of storms across New Brunswick tracking off to the north. Certainly the risk across the Northumberland shore and into Cape Breton for some showers, heavier downpours, and the risk of a thunderstorm. Looks like the best risk, though, will be along that Atlantic coastline, late evening into the overnight, including for the Halifax area, and into tomorrow morning for Cape Breton and the eastern shore region, with some showers and maybe even a rumble of thunder lingering into the morning hours tomorrow. Then we're going to clear out. We're going to become a mix of sun and cloud, and there's a very isolated risk of another shower popping up from Cape Breton into the eastern parts of the mainland tomorrow. Southwest winds, so cooler, 14 to 18 in those onshore winds, and you can see warmer temperatures climbing into the 20s, low to even mid to high 20s as we work our way towards the Northumberland shore and into places like Windsor, and you can see towards the airport, 22 in Halifax. Will be cooler along the South Shore region for tomorrow, but into the mid-20s for inland areas. Now Saturday, bit cooler in the northeast. Note the winds here from the north. And so cooler, Cape Breton and the Northumberland shore will climb up into the mid-20s in places like Bridgewater. Halifax shouldn't be too bad on Sunday or on Saturday as well. Sunday a bit cooler, more like 16 to 20. Isolated shower risk mainly into the southwest, but overall a pretty quiet weekend. Quiet into Monday as well. Tuesday, chance of showers. Definitely keeping our fingers crossed that is going to come to fruition, Amy, as again, the burn ban still in place and in the red in the north. So we need those showers coming, again, most notably on Tuesday.
Yeah, we sure do. All right, thanks for that, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, up next, Tom will talk with Pictou County Councillor Andy Thompson about Northern Pulp abandoning its pursuit of reopening its mill there and how that will affect the community. That's our newsmaker. Stay with us. You're watching CBC Nova Scotia News. Pictou County Councillor Andy Thompson says news the northern pulp mill won't be reopening is bringing mixed emotions. He says even staunch opponents to the mill should be thinking about friends and neighbors who now know their jobs are never coming back. Tom Murphy spoke with him earlier today.
Andy Thompson is a municipality of Pictou County councillor. His father also worked at the mill, as I understand. First of all, your thoughts on what kind of day this is for Pictou County?
I don't know. It's hard to term. Like, it's bittersweet, or I don't think it's a day of celebration. I think the most ardent supporters and the ardent critics wouldn't wish neighbours and people in the community that depend on forestry. It's just a tough day for families, I guess, is the best way to put it.
What does Pictou County lose here then?
Good paying jobs. Like, we talk about affordability in Nova Scotia and Canada. The best way to fight affordability is to have a good paying job. And right now our community's losing a lot of them, and it's devastating, and I don't know if we can even quantify the loss right now.
When you look around this community and you know that this issue has divided this community over the years, how do you think this community moves on?
Good question. We spend a lot of time trying to figure it out as a community to see if we can move on, but for me, it's about community. It's about having people having secure jobs, being able to come home at 5 o'clock, being able to raise their families and be here for their families. And when you have that number of good paying jobs leaving overnight, it's just devastating.
And the fact is the mill hasn't been operating full bore for some time now, but you're already seeing that the impact of that temporary shutdown, now what would seem to be a permanent shutdown.
So, and it's a slow drip, right? Like, it doesn't happen all at once. People don't just board their houses up the day after the announcement. I'll give you an example. In our community, there's a lot of farms in our community that have 5, 10, 20 head of cattle. And there's a gentleman that hauls them to the market. Well, over time, those people that were running those small farms, they had to go further afield for work, so they had to sell off their livestock because they didn't have the time to do it. They weren't home every night, and that's the big thing.
They were working at the mill, but farming a little bit on the side.
On the side, yeah. Or could have been working in the woods. They could have been hauling chips. They could have been cutting. They could have been doing all kinds of things in the forestry business. But as a community, we got to figure out what we want. Like, do we want to have a service-based industry, or do we want to make things? And I think that's where we have to start putting our heads around.
You told me earlier that this is a community that historically has made things.
Yes.
Pulp and paper and so on.
Yep.
Does that change?
I hope not. Not everybody goes to work and puts their feet under a desk. Not everybody does that. People go in the woods. They work in the woods. We had car works here. We had all kinds of stuff. Our manufacturing base has been eroded over the last 20 years. We had just look at our industries around here. We need to come to grips with this, and we need to do something to organize our communities a little better.
Is part of you surprised that this day has come this quickly?
Well, I was in talks. I was on the environmental liaison committee when that was up and running, and what I can tell you is the talk around the table was harsh towards the mill, but it was tough conversations. And the hope was that they would come up with a plan that was suitable for everyone. And we thought that the transformation plan had a bit of life in it, but apparently not.
Well, that hits the nail on the head a little bit, doesn't it? Can you have an industry in Pictou County, must you have an industry in Pictou County that respects the environment, but also is a job creator?
So I guess what I'll say to that is read their transformation study that they presented when they originally tried to restart that mill, because it answered a lot of the questions from the people. I'm not an environmental regulator or anything. I'm a community person. My hope was that there would be some kind of way we could all work together.
Do you think that there is a lost opportunity here? I mean, do you think Pictou, had they tried the province, or had Pictou tried harder, they might have been able to save this mill?
It's a complicated history, I guess is the best way to put it, and I don't know if I don't know if it's a communications issue. That's for other people to figure out. I can't answer that.
And others will feel like good riddance. The mill sort of was calling the shots for a long time in this part of the province, and the fact that Boat Harbour even existed was wrong because of what happened to the First Nations community. So is there any solace in that, given today's developments?
Well, I guess what I'll say for people in all corners of the county, I just want them to think about the people that depended on their livelihood in the forest industry. And my concern is moving forward, now what? What are we going to do next? Like, we know that if you look at a mill in Liverpool, it's not helping the forest industry today. Like, our forests are in bad shape, and what are we going to do next to fix that?
Lots of questions today for sure. Appreciate you taking some of ours. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Coming up, a worldwide shortage is making the price of olive oil spike. It comes as European growers struggle with climate change. Welcome back. A new government bill tabled in the House of Commons today would allow Canadians to pass citizenship rights down to their children born outside the country, a move that would add an unknown number of new citizens and reverse a decision by the federal Conservatives under Stephen Harper. Rafi Boudjikanian has more.
Catherine Burton worked for the Citizenship and Immigration Department for years, but though she is of Mi'kmaq descent, she is not born here. That has consequences for her two boys.
There's only one passage of the Canadian citizenship, so thereby my boys could not receive citizenship, albeit they are status First Nations.
That's due to a change in immigration law brought in under former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, meant to crack down on so-called Canadians of convenience, facing pressure after Ottawa paid $85 million to extract Canadian citizens from Lebanon in 2006 during a war between Israel and Hezbollah.
This isn't, again, a free-for-all. This is truly about a technical fix to a bill that should have been done a while ago.
But instead, it's been a long time coming. The Liberal government fought a legal battle against reversing the move, only getting a court order last December to end the cutoff.
We want a citizenship to be fair, accessible, with clear and transparent rules. Not everyone is entitled to it, but for those who are, it needs to be fair.
Mark Miller is proposing the foreign-born children of Canadian parents who have spent 3 cumulative years in this country would become Canadian citizens. His legislation has the NDP's backing.
I've talked to family members where their children are deemed stateless, lost in the system because of this unjust, punitive, unconstitutional law.
But it's not clear how the Conservatives will react. They say they're still studying the Liberals' proposal. Also unclear how many people would be impacted by the measure. The immigration minister suggesting there could be thousands. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
In a massive show of force, China has launched a series of military drills off the coast of Taiwan. Beijing has called it a punishment for separatist forces seeking independence in the self-governing island. Taiwan is condemning it as a provocation to jeopardize peace and stability in the region. Philippe Leblanc reports from Taipei.
Chinese warships and planes are carrying out 48-hour military drills in the Taiwan Strait in 5 areas surrounding Taiwan. Now, this comes just 3 days after the swearing-in ceremony of Taiwan's new president, Lai Ching-te, someone that Beijing has long called a pro-independence political figure. His speech was deemed by many experts in Canada, the U.S., and Taiwan as being cautious in regards to the relationship with China. But Beijing was not satisfied, and today a spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Beijing said that these military drills were a stern warning for all the pro-independence voices in Taiwan, and also a punishment. Here in Taiwan, it's being called provocation, and the new president Lai Ching-te said he wouldn't hesitate to join his troops on the front line if need be to defend freedom and democracy. As for the U.S., a deputy commander for the U.S. forces in the Indo-Pacific region said that there would be deep consequences if there was to be any sort of military confrontation in the region.
I cannot underscore enough how devastating conflict in the Indo-Pacific region would be. At stake would be untold numbers of lives, trillions of dollars in global economic damage, and an international order, the maintenance of the international order that's delivered relative peace and stability over the past 80 years.
China immediately responded by warning the U.S. to stop backing and selling arms to Taiwan. Now, how are Taiwanese reacting here? Well, some of them are saying that it's just like last year. It's just like 2022 when the Chinese military held similar drills. They say that these Chinese threats, sadly, are part of life and that it's hard to be a Taiwanese. Philippe Leblanc, CBC News, Taipei.
The U.S. Justice Department has launched an antitrust lawsuit against Ticketmaster, accusing it and parent company Live Nation of establishing an illegal monopoly in the music concert business.
Our complaint makes clear what happens when a monopolist dedicates its resources to entrenching its monopoly power and insulating itself from competition rather than investing in better products and services.
The U.S. Attorney General says it has led to higher costs for fans, fewer opportunities for artists, and the end of business for many small promoters. Live Nation called the allegations baseless. Ticketmaster owns or controls more than 265 concert venues in North America. It was a day of Canadian sports history as the Women's National Basketball Association officially announced its anticipated expansion to Toronto. Sports mogul Larry Tenenbaum heads the new franchise and today set out high hopes for it.
First and foremost, this franchise will be Canada's team. While our home base will be here, right here, Coca-Cola Coliseum at Exhibition Place in Toronto, we will play games in Vancouver and Montreal throughout the season, uniting the country behind our franchise.
Tenenbaum's Kilmer Group will own the team. He's also chairman of the company that owns Toronto's Raptors and Maple Leafs. Also on hand were the Prime Minister, Ontario's Premier, and Toronto's Mayor. The new team starts play in the 2026 season. A worldwide shortage is making the price of olive oil spike here in Canada. It comes as growers in Europe grapple with drought, wildfires, and other effects of climate change. Aaron Collins looks at what consumers could expect as experts warn of further hikes.
Dubbed liquid gold by some, the price of olive oil is surging on shelves across Canada. But that spike, no deterrent for some.
You don't need a lot, and to be honest, I'm willing to pay the price because I'd rather have the quality.
Still, rising olive oil prices have other shoppers thinking twice.
It's almost getting to the point where, if it gets worse, then you just won't buy it anymore.
Drought in Europe devastating olive crops, driving the uptick in prices.
Retail prices in Canada on average have gone up 25–26% since January.
And experts say climate change means high prices could be here to stay.
I think it already is considered as a luxury item at the grocery store. It certainly is a luxury vegetable oil.
That dry weather in southern Europe impacting olive crops there.
We only produce about 25% of the olive oil that we normally produce.
And business at this Alberta-based company that produces olive oil in Greece.
Challenge because it's more expensive to produce it. We now have to invest a greater capital, but also a challenge to sell it to customers.
Well, back at the market, a warning that prices could go up again in the fall.
They're predicting around a 45 to 47%, so almost 50% increase.
And some advice for those facing olive oil sticker shock.
So if people are struggling with the increase in the price of olive oil, is there anything they can do?
There's a couple of options. They can either purchase an olive oil that is maybe not extra virgin, maybe just a virgin olive oil, or they can opt for a blend of olive oil, like this one right here is a mixture of sunflower oil and olive oil.
Like all gold, cheaper when it's diluted. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
Canada's main stock index lost almost 150 points today, led by weakness in utilities and base metals. Here's a look at the markets as we head to break. Did you get outside today, Al? Take a break?
Not really,
No?
but it looked great from inside looking out.
I did sneak out for coffee. Yeah,
And
it was nice.
Yeah, it was as nice as it looked.
It was.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you only got to see from the
All
inside.
good, all good. Yeah,
It's a
even
busy
this
day.
morning was good,
It was.
right? And yeah, for sure, a busy day with that hurricane outlook. But yeah, for everybody that missed today, tomorrow is looking pretty good, especially into the afternoon.
Maybe you'll get out.
And the weekend is not looking too bad either. And certainly we'll get out there. Have a look at our viewer picture of the day. This one, just to the northwest of Lunenburg, there is Little Mush Mush and Big Mush Mush Lake. And this is the big lake. And
That's really nice.
Beautiful shot here from Wendy Cook, and looks like they're all primed and prepped for summer there.
They sure are. Got the boat all lined up.
Yeah,
Awesome.
looking good. Thanks to Wendy for sharing Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. So we've got, definitely a nice looking day on the way for tomorrow after the morning clouds with the risk of some showers, potential for a risk of a rumble of thunder tomorrow morning. The best chances are through the overnight where we may indeed, good chance of hearing some rumbles of thunder, not only in the north, but also along the Atlantic coastline. That will all clear out through tomorrow morning. Then a mix of sun and cloud developing into the afternoon. Notably cooler on Saturday, but still nice. High teens, low 20s. Pretty much on par for this time of year. And then we will look at Sunday, where temperatures should range from around 16 to 20. Looking at quiet into Monday as well, with the best chance of showers next Tuesday.
All right. Okay, this is interesting. A brewery in Germany is turning sewage into suds. Have a look at this. Yeah, the project called Reuse Brew. Of course, the water goes through 4 rigorous stages of purification before it's used to make beer. But Ryan, before you rush to the nearest store, it is still a proof of concept.
Yeah, the company is using it to demonstrate sustainability in the face of water shortages due to climate change. Those who tasted the batch called the beer delicious.
Would you try it?
I'd try it for sure.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
We'll get you some. All right, well, that is it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.